GM. Welcome to Web3 Academy, a place for entrepreneurs, businesses, and creators to explore and learn how to use Web3 to transform business models and build thriving communities. This is Jaybird, and I'm here with Kyle Reedhead, and we're here to keep you on the forefront of technology so that you don't get left behind. Friends, we've got an episode for you today. We'll be talking about a lot of exciting things. Let me just run through a few. What happens to SEO when we move from online to on-chain? Does SEO die? What's the future? We're going to find out. Search to earn. Forget about Google. Here's how you can earn tokens searching in Web3. The scary realities of user privacy and how decentralization puts ownership and safety back in your hands. And finally, we're going to touch on freedom, and mostly freedom from big tech, which I think we all want, and we're going to get there together. Before we get into this, we need your help with one thing. We want to get simple Web3 education out to as many people as possible. And we've learned that in order to do that, in order to grow our podcast and get it in front of the masses, we need more people subscribing and following. It's a small step for you, but it makes a huge impact for us. So if you're listening, please pull out your phone, on your laptop, on your desktop, and just do one simple click for us. Click follow on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, or subscribe on YouTube. It will make a big difference. We're so grateful for you, each and every one of our listeners. Thanks so much. Let's get billions onto Web3 together. All right. Do you know what today is? It's the Doer Spotlight. And we've got Colin Pape with us from Presearch.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Colin, let me give you a little intro here. So stoked to have you, my man. Colin is the founder of community-driven and decentralized search engine Presearch. Colin has been in the search space for more than 20 years and previously founded shopcity.com, a network of local marketplaces where he had an encounter with Google that opened his eyes to the negative effects of big tech and led him to the opportunity to create an alternative to Google using blockchain. Colin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jay. Thanks, Kyle.
Excited to have you on here.
So excited to have you. So before we get into the story of what happened and how you had your encounter with Google, because I think we definitely want to jump into that. But before we do that, we always like to start the show with the same question, which is, what's your rabbit hole story? And maybe there's crossover between the two stories, or maybe it started with one of your friends just telling you to buy Bitcoin some years ago. But how did you first go down the rabbit hole? What first caught your interest, and really why? Why did you decide to go and continue down the rabbit hole?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of different facets to my kind of entry into crypto, Web3, blockchain. Originally, I was looking at the potential of local currencies, and that kind of ties into the shopcity.com model and looking at how that could be executed. So started researching blockchain and Bitcoin back 2011, 2012, 2013. We enabled through ShopCity merchants to get paid through Bitcoin, and so that was kind of the first foray into crypto. But it didn't really kind of click. There wasn't a lot of adoption at the time, and I wasn't really coming at it from a speculative purpose. It was more about the practical technology. How could we utilize these payment networks? And then in 2011, ended up having this encounter with Google that just really opened my eyes to how much market power they had and how they could basically make or break any venture on the internet, and how there was just a real huge ton of power that was concentrated within this entity that really there was no transparency, there was no community interfacing, there was really kind of the antithesis of the internet as far as I'm concerned. And so came up with the concept for Presearch in 2013, 2014. that we kind of thought of as the Switzerland of search. That was really what we were thinking of, which is great, considering you're in Switzerland right now.
That's right.
Yeah, if you go back to the original version of it on archive.org, that was the tagline.
No way.
Switzerland of search, and just thought, that there could be more of an open playing field for search, and that there could basically be this interface where it could be like a federated search field, and lots of different search engines could plug into it, and it could kind of live above the search layer, but didn't really have a go-to-market strategy for it. Previous to that, I had started this start page builder called startster.com that I ended up shutting down because Google came out with iGoogle in 2007, 2008, and I got scared, and I thought, it's no way we're going to be able to compete against Google. Kind of had this series of events that have built the confidence that actually we can challenge Google in time. But anyways, fast forward to 2017, my friend Matt, really sharp guy, got me into Ethereum. We brought him in. He did kind of a workshop with our programmers and a bunch of people at shopcity.com to educate us on the opportunities. We looked at would it apply to ShopCity. Spoke with our legal advisor Addison, who was the founding lawyer for Ethereum. Actually, he's out of Toronto. You guys may know him, Addison Cameron Huff, really sharp guy. And he said, kind of a gray area, a little bit risky right now. You've got already existing customers and investors and employees. Don't know if it's such a great idea to try to, integrate it into your business model. So thought, okay, well, we don't really want to just sit on this opportunity. This seems like a great way to build community and to bootstrap something. And so thought, well, what about Presearch? And realized that this was now a go-to-market strategy that would just fit perfectly. So came up with how everything would integrate, and the tokenomics. It was really kind of fairly straightforward, and then ran with it. So
you're a real OG in this space. I didn't realize that you were in it for that long, and I think Presearch sounds like just an unbelievable model, and I'm excited to dive into that. But first, we're going to lay some groundwork and just talk about kind of the foundation of SEO and sort of what's happening right now and why we think Web3 could be a solution for this. But first, can you just walk us through a little bit more of your story of what happened with your previous business in Google? I've heard the story a little bit before, and it's quite interesting. And I think it sets us up for why we need some decentralization in this space. So if you want to dive into that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so ShopCity, it's kind of like a platform. Basically, we registered all these domain names like more than 20 years ago. So shopnewyork.com, shopboston.com, shopsf.com, shopjustabout-everywhere.com, and built out this model where people locally could license the platform, get access to the domain name, and then go out and build kind of this local business network and a marketplace platform. And so one of my business partners, Jim, he's in Silicon Valley area. He grew up in San Jose. We ended up connecting with a guy who went out and did business development in Mountain View, right where Google's based. And one of his first orders of business, of course, is joining the Mountain View Chamber of Commerce. And so as he does that, he realizes, oh, they're running a Shop Mountain View campaign. We have shopmountainview.com, which was, a site that we thought, oh, that would probably resonate there. So we spun that up. Through that partnership with the chamber, somebody from the newspaper came to write about it. The publisher of the paper said, hey, we're running a Shop Mountain View campaign. Could we license it and become what we call a city manager? So we thought, okay, that sounds great. They've got all the relationships. They ended up bringing in the city of Mountain View, who was also running a Shop Mountain View campaign. And so we started marketing shopmountainview.com, shoppaloalto.com, shopmenlopark.com in Silicon Valley. Of course, Google is a member of their home chamber of commerce as well. So this is certainly kind of within their, purview and radar. Next thing we know, they're starting this thing called the Get Your City Online campaign, partnering with chambers of commerce. We're like, oh, that's weird. And then we wake up in the middle of July in 2011, and almost all of our sites are on page 8 of Google. So you could search for shopmountainview.com by name, it would be on page 8. So we're like, oh, what the heck? This is weird. What did we do? We start looking into it, trying to figure out, from an SEO standpoint, hey, did we have an issue with our robots.txt? Did we do whatever, too much interlinking, any of these different things? So kind of start walking through it. We're getting all this community feedback. We're participating in all these SEO forums. In the meantime, we're trying to get somebody from Google to give us some type of guidance, and it's just not forthcoming. Everybody's saying, yeah, I don't know, it looks kind of fine. We can't really see any issues. So we ended up, after like our sites basically and our traffic getting nuked for a couple of weeks, start getting desperate. And it's like, well, what are we going to do if we can't get this resolved? This whole business model is going to die, and we've got millions of dollars invested into it, and nobody can find it on Google. So I ended up seeing an article from a lawyer called Gary Reback. He was the guy who broke up Microsoft with Windows and Internet Explorer back in 99, 2000. He was running an investigation with the FTC. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to email this guy and just see if there's, next thing I know, I'm in Menlo Park talking to Gary, and he's going, wow, this is amazing. You've got a great story. This is like a control group, because not all of your sites, so if they say it's a quality issue, you can prove it's not that. If they say it's, a content issue or a platform issue, it's not that. Next thing I know, my phone starts ringing, and we end up with this front page article on the business section of the San Jose Mercury News. And in it, Google admitted for the first time that they had assessed a manual penalty. Previous to that, all their communication was it's all algorithmic, and oh yes, there might be some change in the algorithm, and that's why you've been demoted. No, in this point, they admitted, and then consequently built out within the Google webmaster tools a manual penalty resolution system. But anyways, Gary was able to basically help us through the press, put enough pressure on Google to get our issue resolved, but really realized just how much market power they had seen in the course of the course of doing our research and communicating with people in these forums, that like thousands of others had basically been nuked by Google and had to shut down or lay everybody off, and just thought, man, this isn't right. There needs to be something that's more community driven. We need some type of, search is a utility. It's the gateway and the access point for all the information on the web. And yet we have this one corporate entity that is basically, at their own kind of will. Oh, we're going to spin up a competitor. We're going to squash everybody in the space. We're going to, make this change. Now it's majorly about censorship and kind of bias and agenda, but it's we need something that is more accountable to the community, something that has a different foundation. It's not just about profit. And so, started thinking about how that could happen and how we could leverage big tech basically to defeat big tech. And so that was kind of the original, UI for Presearch. It was an interface into Google. You would search Google, but you would have this really kind of thin kind of wedge into that user behavior. Okay, set up a different, search page, at least, where now you could have a search field, and now you could have all these different icons below the search field where you could now search all these different resources. And for me, that was really actually the biggest value, because I don't know, probably a lot of the creators and people that are watching, you have different platforms that you're searching. It could be a CRM system. It could be a content management system. It could be a database. I was always doing lots of domain name lookups. And, my current or my previous workflow was going in, I would either have to bookmark all those sites, or I would have to Google them, pull them up, wait for the page to load, find the search field, put my search in. In this case, I can add in all these different providers and then just direct my query into that resource, and it saves me time. And I thought, that's one way that we could make things more efficient than Google, and it would be potentially a go-to-market strategy. And so that was the first prototype. But again, kind of didn't really see like, how are we going to bring this out to millions of people without like going down the regular path? Oh, we're going to go raise venture capital. Now we're going to be in that same paradigm that big tech is in, and we're going to get pulled into the profit narrative and, the Wall Street exit and all that kind of stuff. And so it just didn't really pursue it. But yeah, that's kind of the backstory.
It's a absolutely crazy story. And I mean, I think we're starting to hear a lot more of these happening, right? It's not just Google either. Like in the commerce world, you have Amazon who does this, right? They just rug anyone who has a good, product or whatever, and they make their own for way cheaper. I think this is one of the big reasons why Web3, is gaining so much adoption and so much traction, is because hopefully building things on the blockchain and decentralizing is going to solve this. Let me give a quick breakdown for people if they don't really understand search engine or SEO. I just want to lay the foundation a little bit here. Google, I don't know how many people use Google versus the others, but I think it's got to be like 90% or something, at least,
92%, yeah.
92%. So you think of that,
Jesus.
There's billions of users. And I mean, first of all, the search engine that Google created is an amazing thing. It has made the internet so much easier for all of us, right? Like if you remember the internet without search engine, like what a terrible time that was. So like we have to a little bit be grateful for what they've done.
Sure.
But the power that they've kind of gained as a result of this is unbelievable, because you got to think of the first page of Google almost like, I don't know, running a business in the middle of Manhattan or the middle of, London or wherever, any of the big cities where all the traffic is and where everyone's going. It's like if you run a business there, a storefront, that's the same as like having your business or your website, in this case, on the first page of Google. Like if you're not on the first page of Google, I forget, maybe you know the stat of this, you probably do. How many people actually make it to the second page of Google? It's like a very, very
like
small.
2%. Yeah.
2%. That's insane. So like that real estate is insanely valuable to be on the first page of Google. And the problem is that they can control who goes on there, and there's really nothing we can do about it. Although I guess, did you actually get them to change? Like when you put all that pressure on them, did it get turned around?
We did. It took over a month, and so all these poor businesses, like in our hometown of Midland, Ontario, like every business had their web presence gone for over a month. It was honestly, it was horrible. But yeah, we did get it resolved.
Unbelievable. So let's talk about how, I mean, I think we can all understand and grasp the problem here, and the problem is the amount of power that they hold, and that they can just kind of click a button and boom, you can be moved off for whatever reason, whether it's censorship resistance, censoring someone for something, or blocking competition or whatever. Give us the sort of like idea of how does Web3 fix this? What is, if it's the blockchain, or if it's like what sort of incentives, or how do we fix this problem? Because going up against Google is obviously not easy. And can decentralizing the algorithm, or like, how do we even fix this via Web3?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of numerous facets to how Web3 can enable a massive challenge like this to actually be successfully mounted. And so the first one is that kind of capital formation and the foundational entity, and kind of the loyalties that are set up at the genesis of something. And so Google, they were research students. They realized that if they were going to scale this, they would need tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. They were in Silicon Valley, so they ended up getting, venture capital. Well, the venture capitalists have investment partners, limited partners. They all have an expectation of a financial return. And so they need from their investment some sort of exit. That would be either selling to somebody else, or it would be going public. And so Google did end up going public. They tried to do kind of the most, egalitarian Dutch auction method for putting their shares out to the public, but it's still, you've got to be and like, I don't know if you guys own shares in Google. Like I don't. I don't know too many people, truthfully, that do, but I know just about everybody who uses Google. And so, yeah, you've got, this opportunity, but it's not really aligned with the actual user base. And so with Presearch, there's no venture capitalists, there's no investors. It's basically community crowdfunded, very similar to like a Kickstarter project. And we have this token, the pre token, that is this unit of value that we basically have committed. This is going to be the unit of value. This is going to be the central focus for how value is driven. Demand is driven on the advertising side. It's going to be how value is shared out to the user side, and we're going to maintain alignment with all the participants of the ecosystem, whether they are people who bought tokens in our original crowd sale, which are set up as basically prepaid advertising credits, or the people who are going to search and be rewarded as they're searching, kind of the incentive for them to shift away from Google, or those who are marketers and are going to go out and help us build the user base. And so we've got a referral program. They earn Presearch tokens. And so we've basically preserved alignment with all the different stakeholders of the ecosystem around this one unit of value.
Colin, I understand the ownership and the incentivization and the financial side of it. I think that's obviously a huge impact or a huge unlock of Web3. So when it comes to like the business, that to me makes complete sense. I'm curious on the product itself. Like when you're talking SEO, the reason Google is so big is because it works so well. Their algorithm is so good. They have they're able to basically parse it across the entire internet and get every single website. And we can do it all in like a second, right? And that's really their moat, is just how good their algorithm is, and like how relevant the searches are that we actually, when we're searching, we actually get the right stuff. And I think that's why it beat out a lot of its competitors early on, because they focused on simplicity and just like that algorithm. Does that change with whether it's Presearch or others that are doing this? I mean, more just when SEO gets out of the hands of Google, or maybe Google has to disrupt themselves, but like, does the algorithm also have to change? Is there a more fair distributed way of how the algorithm works, or who controls the algorithm? So outside of the business side, is there anything in terms of the product itself that changes with Web3?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, where Presearch is at right now, and then what our vision is, those are two different things. So, what we're doing right now, largely leveraging external indexes, databases, APIs, and kind of combining that within something like a meta search or an aggregator type system. But over time, the goal is to build a fully decentralized index. And so, one of the core differences, I mean, there's a lot of computing power that's required to utilize and build out a search engine. I mean, Google has massive scale, so their needs are much greater than a startup like Presearch, but they've got something like 20 massive multi-hundred million or billion-dollar data centers all over the world, and everything is highly controlled, highly centralized. In our case, basically, we're not going to go raise venture capital, assert ourselves into a jurisdiction with all these physical real estate pieces and data centers. So, well, how do we leverage existing computing resources that are out there on the network? Well, we can enable people to have things like a Presearch node, which this is a Raspberry Pi based device. People can run it on their home internet connection or on a business internet connection, or they can install the Presearch node software on their own computer or on virtual private servers, and they can contribute computing resources into the network in exchange for Presearch tokens. So that then enables us to incentivize that layer of infrastructure to basically kind of self-assemble and manage the needs of the network without us centrally having to have database administrators and centralized server admins and people that are running all this different hardware all over the world. We've got a small team that's running kind of that core right now, top layer of the network, that what we call node gateways, which basically all the different nodes connect to. But the vision is to decentralize those as well, so that ultimately we can have a core team that is contributing software through a GitHub or a process where community members can participate ultimately. And just like Bitcoin, essentially have this software that people can run all over the place and connect into the network and provide the infrastructure needs of the network. that is kind of the core and what we've just released. We released our main net at the end of May, and we now have 73,000 user nodes that are powering the computing resources for Presearch.
Basically, what I think we've learned so far is that what we're trying to do here is, one, you're decentralizing the business model or the business of search, right? And that's
Absolutely.
by taking the business of Google, let's say, but in this means we're doing it through tokenomics, where it's shared and the governance and ownership is shared. You're also decentralizing the infrastructure of search, so the data storage, which I think is really key for scaling, and also removes like the risk of, well, what if someone went and blew up Google's data centers? Then it's just screwed. Whereas if it's decentralized, you're all good. And then before we get into Presearch and learning more about all the things you guys are doing, the other layer of search I find is the algorithm. This is the thing that you said was the biggest cause that resulted in your business basically being screwed for like a month. Are we decentralizing the algorithm as well? Or how does the algorithm, like who owns that algorithm, and how do we know how that algorithm works? Like Google keeps it private and they can control that algorithm. They can change it whenever they want. Does that also get changed here? Or what are you guys doing with that? Because that seems to me like the third area of search that we haven't discussed yet.
Yeah, so ultimately, yeah, it will involve a protocol, and for the actual blockchain based index, which would be something that yes, could be harnessed for many different purposes by many different search engines, and the value of that could be driven into the system in different ways, whether it's API access or different. There's something called Common Crawl right now that is like an open web crawl. It's kind of a base data set that anybody can utilize. It's free, it's open source, so it's something similar to that. And Common Crawl is pretty good. It's not Google quality though, and so then you've got that data set, but then you've got there isn't really just one algorithm. It could be like, okay, hey, this is a local query. This has a local algorithm that's attached to it. Oh, this has an algorithm that is associated with some niche topic. It could be something that identifies, hey, the query is commerce related. This has a shopping algorithm and a shopping UI. And so if you look at Google, as you start doing queries, or you're starting to see the early versions of that on Presearch, like if you go onto presearch.com right now and you type in Bitcoin, you'll see the community package for crypto information. And so that basically identifies, based on that query term, we can basically say, hey, is this part of the crypto information set? Does this require that view and that algorithm? And we're basically pulling from like the CoinMarketCap API to see, okay, is that term a crypto packet, a crypto project term? Is it a ticker symbol for a crypto project? If it is, then it's a crypto query. Okay, then display the crypto community package, which then gives you a chart and some information on that specific crypto project, and it's powered currently by the CoinMarketCap API. So right now that's the default community package, but we have the ability for you guys could go in and build, or somebody watching this show could go in and build a crypto information package. They could determine what the UI looks like. They could say, oh, I don't like, CoinMarketCap. I'm going to make it run on CoinGecko. Well, then we have the ability to display a UI where the user can go in and like toggle through, well, what are the different community packages? Oh, okay, I like the one that Jay built better. I'm going to make that my default. And so it's ultimately, Presearch will be like the set of defaults by default. But ultimately, we're enabling people to set their own defaults. And we're building something out called community search engines, which would enable somebody, let's say, you guys are influencers in the Web3 space. You want to have your own pre-configured version of Presearch that has all your different defaults that you think are valuable for your audience. You could then go out and start sharing the link for that community search engine. They would then by default adopt your defaults, and then you could earn some of the Presearch tokens that they earn as searchers because you were the one who introduced them into the platform. And so it's ultimately like there's kind of multiple layers to it. Community search engines is like kind of the turnkey UI and ability to interact with what will ultimately be the protocol. But underlying that ultimately will be a protocol that people that have competing platforms will be able to utilize. So it won't be just Presearch. There will be, the Presearch data set and the Presearch kind of core information that's available out to other people who want to build their own search engines. And that's really ultimately where it's going in time.
It sounds like we need to rethink. So for the listeners, we're sort of rethinking how we do search, right? Because you're basically talking about creating different UIs or UXs for search, right? Like you can either start searching and do it with someone that you follow, like almost like a social concept to search kind of thing, which is quite interesting. So it's very different than like everyone has one interface, which is Google, and we all search the same way. What you're saying is what decentralizing everything does, and sort of the things that you're enabling allows you to start searching within communities or following communities to search, which I think is just something very different than most people are probably used to. From a user standpoint, so I get all the like opportunities there for, let's say, agencies and businesses and whoever else that wants to start to build those kind of things. From a user perspective, why is this better for me than Google? Like, other than the fact that you can earn tokens, okay, but let's put that aside because I don't think that's a sustainable solution to anything. But from a user standpoint, is this something that is better now for users to search? Like, Google's pretty good. Google accomplishes everything I need. Like, why do I need all these additional things? What does that unlock for me? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I think like the early user base for Presearch is honestly people who don't like Google and they don't want to support Google, and they're looking for an alternative. And so that's really the earliest adopters. And so in this case, we need to be a reasonable facsimile for Google, and if we can be that, then people will shift over to Presearch, and that's really what's happened so far. But ultimately, I mean, for me, like I haven't used Google in a long time. The results on Presearch are Google quality. So I mean, you can go and Presearch just about anything, and you'll get pretty much as good of results as you would get on Google. In some cases, if you're, let's say, a crypto user, or if you're somebody who's doing, currency exchanges, as part of your workflow, Presearch is actually better. We've got a currency converter that is, much more robust than what is in Google. The crypto information package, again, much more robust, that's within Google. And we see ultimately those community packages and those on-page results, those knowledge panels, which, like you said, page 2 of Google is, there's not a lot of action there, right? The knowledge panels on Google are actually where the action really is. And that's why they brought them on page. And so Presearch ultimately has the ability to have, thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people out there independently building these knowledge packages for all different niches and different topics that Google might not even know or identify as being an opportunity or something that would deserve its own knowledge panel. Something that we centrally as a project team could never identify. There, people come up with stuff and we're like, oh, wow, we had no idea that was such a huge niche. And all these people are really passionate about this one thing, had no idea, never heard of it. Well, you have the ability now through community packages to go out and build that on-page experience, and you can make it, quite customizable and quite valuable. And so like that's a way that Presearch can get better than Google from a results standpoint. I mean, Google hasn't changed a whole lot over the past 20 years. If you look at it from a UI standpoint, aside from these knowledge panels that they have basically been adding to keep people more on the Google search experience and not going out onto external websites, the only other thing that's really changed is they used to have one ad, then two, then three, then four. Now, like if you go to a commercial query, there's 5 ads before the organic results come up. So like there's a huge opportunity right now to disrupt Google and to provide a better user experience. And why they haven't changed much over the past 20 years is because they found out pretty early on the best way to monetize. They didn't really necessarily just find the best way to drive search results. There's been very little innovation over the past 20 years. What they have done is figure out how to bring in over $100 billion a year with these simple text ads that are relatively unchanged from like 2005. So that is the Google secret sauce.
Very true. So it sounds like Presearch is essentially an aggregator of all the different search platforms which are on the internet. Like it could be your commerce like Amazon, it could be your block explorer like Etherscan, could be your website explorer like Google. It's kind of all those, and it's one intuitive way to sort of click around and get them all on one page, which is actually super cool. I'm curious of then, what is the business model? Because we've talked about, you talked about if you run a node, which is allowing you to decentralize the infrastructure, you can earn tokens. Cool. You can search, you can earn tokens. Cool. One thing we know from Web3 though, is anytime you're inflating a currency and just consistently giving out tokens, it's eventually going to go to zero, right? We saw it with Axie Infinity. We saw it with Steppen from, which is on Solana. I mean, there's so many that have done this. So I assume you guys have a model that either brings those tokens back into like out of circulation, or it burns them or something, so that we're not just always inflating. Can you sort of talk about the tokenomic structure? Because it's actually quite interesting the way that Presearch is doing it.
Yeah, so it's a fixed supply. So that's one of the core differences. There's a fixed supply of Presearch tokens, and basically the demand driver is the advertising platform, again, to that $100 billion opportunity, and like the economic value in search is tremendous. It is literally the most valuable marketing opportunity that exists in a scalable self-serve way. There's something called transactional intent. Somebody, as they're searching, they have indicated the intent for a transaction that they intend to complete. And it, from a marketing standpoint, is like that moment in time where you want to get in front of somebody. Hey, I'm looking for something. It's like, man, what's a better, more qualified opportunity? Somebody's walking down the street. Hey, does somebody know where our restaurant is? Hey, if you've got somebody standing out in front of your restaurant, yeah, why don't you come in here? Like, you're going to convert those people, and they have indicated what their intent is. And Google has taken it to this whole other level where they are building profiles and basically predicting, which is creepy, like what you're actually wanting, and they're enabling marketers to target you based on intent that you may not have even expressed yet. So that's like a whole other level, but you don't need to do that. Honestly, the most profitable business model before Google was the Yellow Pages, and the Yellow Pages is the original, what they call directional media. You indicate that you have a need, and you're going literally to a resource to say, hey, who can fill my need? Well, any of the people that get listed in that list of options, they're going to convert really well. They're going to get a lot of value from being included in that list. And so we're basically taking that huge, massive opportunity, and we're now bringing it into this pre-denominated advertising system. So we built something that uses what we call keyword staking. We haven't turned on the consumptive charge for it yet, which is like the cost per click as somebody, clicks on the ad, which is what then brings pre back into the ecosystem. But to start, as far as creating demand goes, we enable people to basically stake their pre against whichever term they want to have their ad displayed under. And so we're moving to more of a kind of a hybrid model where there will be like two different components. One will be how much you stake, and the other will be how much you are willing to pay on a cost per click basis. And then that will determine, kind of that mix of exposure that your ad gets. Because if there's multiple ads, which, in Google, there's heavy competition, and because again, it converts so well. Where Presearch is right now, we've got 4 million registered users. There's about 1 million active users. We're doing, a couple million queries a day. As that gets to 10 million queries a day, which is kind of the next goal, then it becomes a lot, right now it's really relevant for crypto projects. It's really relevant for, Web3 projects, because that's our audience. Our audience is almost exclusively, crypto enthusiasts. And so, that's really the term Bitcoin right now is something like 6 million pre-staked on it. It's crazy. But,
sorry, Colin, let's just slow down for a sec. I'm trying to understand how you're using staking and how that applies to advertisers. Can you explain this as if you're explaining it to your mom?
Absolutely. So if you go on to keywords.presearch.com, you can see there's an advertise button, then you can see there's a search field. And so you can type in, let's say you had an ad for shoes, and you wanted, every time somebody searches for the word shoes, you wanted your ad to be displayed. You can go into this system, you can type in the word shoes, you can see what the maximum stake is, which is where somebody, again, they still own the tokens. They can cancel their ad at any time and get the tokens back. They can do whatever they want with the tokens, sell them or use them on a different ad, but they are committing them to that term. And they're basically saying, I give this much economic value to having my ad be displayed when somebody searches for that term. And then if they have the most, it's currently a winner take all model, and it's just based on staking. They can then go in, put in, just like they can on Google, a title for an ad, a description, and then a link. And so then somebody goes in, they search for shoes, they see, oh, who's staking the most tokens? Oh, this guy, pull their ad up. Their ad says this. When somebody clicks on that link, goes out to their external website. Currently, there's actually no charge on that. So they're basically getting free traffic as people are clicking on it, which is, something that doesn't exist really anywhere else, because we're basically focused on, building the demand and kind of getting all those different mechanisms sorted out, building that audience, making it more relevant. And then when we get to a point, which is going to happen later this year, because we're already pretty much there, where there is, demonstrated economic value, people who are getting, dollars into a business model every time somebody clicks on their ad, well, a portion of that value will then start flowing back into the ecosystem in the cost per click model. And so that's basically how it works currently.
So it's essentially like an auction-based kind of thing where you put up the value that you want, and so long as you're the highest, you're going to rank the highest, and then someone can easily come in and just stake more of the Presearch token, whatever that is, and now they take over, and it's sort of just keeps going up and up and up. So when it comes to tokens, it's all about buy and sell pressure, right? If you're just giving away tokens, then those people are selling it because they're earning, right? They want to sell that into whatever their local currency is. But to balance that, you need either hold pressure or you need buy pressure. And essentially the model here is that for advertisers, if you want to use this platform, you have to buy the tokens, number one, and then you have to commit to staking those tokens for as long as you want to use the ad, essentially. And so that creates buy pressure. It also creates holding pressure, which is quite nice. People aren't selling the tokens all the time. And so that's how you can kind of balance the ecosystem or the value of the token itself, I guess. Is there potential for additional ways to have, whether it's advertisers or users or something, to want to hold or buy these tokens, or is there any other plans around the token itself?
Yeah. So a couple of the other things, I mean, so having that consumptive, click revenue coming in, that's a way to replenish the ecosystem with pre. But we've got some other methods we haven't rolled out yet, but NFT based, where you're going to be able to basically secure, secondary or tertiary space within the UI. So whether it'll be different if it's on mobile or if it's on desktop. But let's say you're on desktop, down the right hand side of the page, there's a lot of real estate. Well, we could have an NFT that corresponds to an ad position, that corresponds to a language, a region, a search term. And basically, we can sell those NFTs for pre to bring pre back into the ecosystem, and then enable whoever is the holder of that NFT to, and this really, I think would work great from an agency standpoint, giving them the ability to go out and resell that ad space at whatever they think they can sell it for, again, denominated in pre. So it's a way for them to have that bit of loyalty. And this, again, coming from more the local search space and kind of directories, and like Google basically used all the Yellow Pages companies that had all the relationships with all the local businesses to bring them all into the Google My Business ecosystem. And then they basically cut out the agencies because I don't need them anymore. We've got the relationships now. And that just doesn't sit right with me, honestly, being on the other side of it.
Right.
And so, hey, what is a way that we could enable people who are those agencies and are those stakeholders to actually have more of like an ownership element within the platform? How much more incentivized will they be if they know, oh, that won't be taken away from me, right? They know that this is an asset, and we could introduce something like Harburger taxes that are kind of a method for ensuring that, that space doesn't go to waste and whatnot. Right. But it's still, what it does is it gives people that value. So there's that model, which I think is really interesting. But then ultimately, the rewards side of things, to searchers, to infrastructure providers, it might not be denominated in pre. That's another marketing opportunity. Honestly, we can partner up with newer crypto projects that are rich in their tokens, but maybe they don't have, a ton of Bitcoin or ETH or other things, or the ability to exchange into pre. We could enable them to distribute their token through our system, which has a really extensive anti-abuse system. So they could come in and basically take over, let's say, rewards for the week, and they would get exposure all throughout the Presearch ecosystem. And then the rewards, instead of coming out in pre, they come out in the native token of whatever that project is. And then as a searcher, you're basically building a wallet of not just pre tokens, but tokens from all these other projects that are coming in and incentivizing people. So, those are some of the ways ultimately we see it going.
It's interesting. The two questions that I get asked the most, that I feel like the two takeaways I'm getting from this podcast is SEO going to die with Web3? And I think the answer is no. It actually opens up so much more opportunity when you open up the protocol, or you turn it into a protocol rather than a product, and you open source it, you have APIs, and you allow others to build on top of it. You can actually do things that are not possible in search today. So I think the answer to, is SEO going to die in Web3? The answer is absolutely not. Though it sounds a little bit complicated, it's probably going to get even better and more accurate. The other question is, the other question I always get is advertising going to die in Web3? And I think the answer to this is absolutely not. Advertising is very useful. The difference here is it's about to become an open marketplace, right? So right now, advertising in Web 2 means you just abide by the rules of Google, and whatever Google wants to charge you, you have to pay that. And it doesn't matter what they say or what they do, you just have to do it. Same with Facebook, everything else. And what's happening here is, it's like Web3 is turning this, or Presearch, but I'm sure this is going to apply to social platforms, to everything else, is like, it's becoming an open marketplace for advertising. And it's like, we'll let the markets decide what the cost should be for displays in, and you can get very specific, is what you're saying. It's like, what's going to be the cost to put on the first page of this term in this country for these type of users? Like, you can go so specific with it. And I think that is really, really cool. And a big unlock is that we sort of open up the code, and we open up the utility and the potential of search, but we also open up the marketplace on the advertising side. So those are my big takeaways, which is very, very interesting. we're getting close to ending up on time here. So Jay, I don't know if you have any additional questions. If not, we do a speed round, which I think we're going to jump into as well. But Jay, if you have any additional questions, feel free to.
Yeah, I just want to ask one question about, so if I have to stake stake Presearch tokens in order to rank for a keyword from an advertising perspective, what happens to small businesses who don't have the resources or the budget to be able to acquire the necessary Presearch tokens to stake?
So that's why we're moving to this kind of hybrid model where it'll be more of a mix of what you're willing to pay on a CPC basis plus what you're able to stake. But we actually have one of our community members actually just last week opened up a pre-lending model. So they have a bunch of Presearch tokens. They're now starting to basically lease those out to people who want to be able to use the current model, which is winner take all. And so they can basically pay in whatever other currency or however they decide to, accept value and enable people to use their pre. And so I think, there's definitely ways that it could be done. We're definitely, I would say, more aligned to the little guy and the underdog. That's kind of our background, and so definitely trying to ensure that this isn't something where it just becomes dominated by those who are the wealthiest.
I mean, that's how it is in Web2 anyway, right? Like that's in Google. If I could own any keyword I want if I have unlimited amount of money. So it's like, it's not that this open marketplace is making that worse. If anything, like you said, it makes, because it's open, we can create different iterations and things like loans and things like that to like make it more innovative and find ways to help. But ultimately, like, money does matter in these instances. So I'm not sure that Web3 ever really fixes that. But
isn't that a cool example? Like, what a great example of what community does in Web3, right? I love that story.
And so I think what you mentioned, like SEO doesn't go away, advertising doesn't be like, if anything, advertising becomes better because your incentives are aligned. So as a searcher and as people kind of get more into the ecosystem, they realize, oh, that person who put up pre in order to have their ad here is actually it's a sponsor. That's somebody that I should go support because they are conferring value on the tokens that I own. It's not the same as if it's just extractive and it's just revenue based where you're not getting a piece of it. And there ultimately may be a model where we could enable community members to basically allocate some of the pre that they are earning, or it could be, again, that it's staked so they don't lose anything. But they might say, hey, yeah, this is a great brand. These guys have great values. I'm going to take some of my power within the ecosystem and I'm going to confer it onto this sponsor so that their costs are lower and they can be exposed to more people within the ecosystem. Again, it's about giving people all these tools to confer value and shift value, and ultimately it could end up with a really just aligned community in so many different ways. That's what I hope to see out of it.
Absolutely.
All right, let's start to wrap up and go to the speed round here, Colin. Okay, so just gonna fire a few questions at you. First, what's one token, could be NFT or fungible, that you'll never sell other than Presearch?
Other than pre, my good friend Marco is the founder of a project called Merit Circle. MC is the token. Got a bunch of MC tokens. They're basically building a platform for in-game assets that ultimately will largely be NFT based. But they're building a whole platform for different gaming guilds. I think out of all the trends out there, gaming is probably, I had no idea how big it is. I mean, honestly, like I always talk about, search is like the biggest opportunity Google brings in, and I actually stand corrected. It's gaming. Gaming is bigger than the music industry, the movie industry, the sports industries put together. It's like over a $200 billion a year industry. It's obscene. and it's a huge trend. And at this point, you know, we've got all these really successful games that have their own in-game currencies and assets, but they're not utilizing Web3. And I think that's probably the biggest opportunity that is out there from a gaming standpoint. And so what Marco and his team are doing is building out a platform to enable different games to you know, do that and basically Web3 themselves. And they've invested in tons and tons of they brought in 106 million in their fair launch, and they've invested in all the leading blockchain game platforms that are out there. And I think MC it's a huge hold. Other than that,
Awesome.
Bitcoin.
Okay, final question. If you had a billboard which 1 billion people were going to see, what would you write on that billboard?
Ooh, and it can never change?
No one's ever asked that. There's no rules here. It's you know, it's composable, but you can only give one answer right now.
I give one answer right now. Well, it would have to be, you know, presearch.com something. I'd have to make it, you know, what's the community gonna?
Wow.
Yeah, open it up to the community. What does the community think needs to be that tagline? But it needs to have presearch.com on it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Colin, thank you so much for the time. This has been a pleasure. Really enjoyed learning about Presearch and all your beliefs around decentralization and, you know, really the importance of aligning incentives in the space. I think we all really believe in that. And thanks for all the work you do. Wish you all the best. And
learn more about Presearch, where do we go? I mean, obviously presearch.com. We can see that on the billboard, but anything else, Twitter or anything else, or yeah, where do we find you guys?
Yeah, twitter.com/presearch news, Telegram, t.me/presearch, discord.presearch.com. Those are kind of the best places.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much. That was great. And so good to finally have those questions answered that I consistently get asked, like on a weekly basis or probably a daily basis. So Colin, thanks so much. And all the best in Ontario, where Jay and I are from, but are not there right now. Thank you for listening to Web3 Academy. We hope this helps you along your Web3 journey. And if it does, please share this episode and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. By the way, if you have yet to join the Discord community, you are missing out. This is where all the magic happens. This is where we learn, where we ask questions, where we network. You want to be in there. The link to join is in the description below. And finally, a quick disclaimer. Nothing in this podcast was financial advice. Crypto and Web3 can be risky. You can literally lose it all. In fact, if you invest on account of what we say, you probably will lose it all. So don't do that. In all honesty, the point of this podcast is to remove the noise of markets and price and focus on utility and implementation anyway. So you should not take any of this as financial advice. Thank you, friends, and see you in the next one.